This is the Early AI podcast hosted by Seth Earley. Join us as we delve deep into the passions, expertise, and experiences of thought leaders and practitioners to talk about what's possible with artificial intelligence. The Early AI podcast is sponsored by Early Information Science, your digital transformation journey with design and deployment of innovative technology solutions, as well as Vector. Now enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Early AI podcast. I'm your host, Seth Earley, and each episode we jump into different challenges and issues around AI adoption and how organizations need to be prepared, how they need to execute, and how they need to operationalize AI. Today, we're going to be looking at how AI is influencing governance, risk, and compliance, and what it takes to lead in this rapidly changing environment. Right, the technology is changing so quickly. It's very, very difficult, even for the experts, to keep up with. So joining me today is Brian Stafford. He's CEO of Diligent, a $700 million global software and AI company focused on governance, risk, and compliance. Brian has served as CEO for the past 10 years, guiding the organization through growth and innovation. Before joining Diligent, he was a partner at McKinsey & Company and an entrepreneur. Based in New York City with his wife and 4 kids, he draws on a diverse background in consulting, entrepreneurship, and executive leadership to help organizations navigate very complex challenges. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me here, Seth, and I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Great. So I'd like to start with a challenge, issues around misconceptions around AI. What are organizations not getting? Going to an enterprise, and that's changing over time, but what are they not getting? What are the things that are great misconceptions on the part of leadership, on the part of boards and organizations?
I think for most organizations, where we stand now, at least from a CEO perspective, I think that there is a widely held belief that AI is going to be transformative to organizations. And so I think we've for most organizations, crossed beyond the what. And now many organizations are into the mode of how. How do you actually get there? How do you actually get either the productivity, the insights, the growth, or whatever it might end up being? And I think a lot of organizations are still struggling with the how.
So what are they not getting? Like, what are the things that are getting in their ways? Or when you talk to a board, what are the parts that they either misunderstand or don't understand?
I think it's a lack of capabilities within the organization. And so there is awareness, there is knowledge, but how do I actually drive that transformation in my support organization? How do I actually use AI to transform the way that we interact with our clients? And I think that's where the gap breaks down. And there's a lot of organizations out there and kind of joke about it and call it like website AI. You go to a company's website and it talks about all the different AI capabilities that exist, but then when in practice, what does that mean beyond, a button that does really, really basic stuff? Because the button that does basic stuff, candidly, we can all do that on our own. Right. We can all do that through ChatGPT, Anthropic, Claude, whatever else it ends up being. But how do you actually really fundamentally drive that change?
Yeah, so it's not necessarily a misconception, it's just a lack of knowledge. So they're not laboring under false ideas. They're just saying, okay, I get it, it's going to be transformational, but really, how do I do it?
Yeah, I see McKinsey publish, but any other consulting organization that, function X is going to be transformed by 20% or made, 50% more efficient. And so a CEO then goes and looks at that function and says, okay, now how do we actually get there and how do we effectively do it? And you see some organizations, and it is part of the knowledge capabilities, kind of some maturity matrix that actually talks about why some clients are further along on that journey than others. But I think many organizations are still in the early stages of driving that. Because you'll see the CEO needs to be the champion of AI transformation. Okay, but the CEO needs to make sure that there are people capable within the organization who can actually take it on and actually drive it.
So, and a lot of organizations are kind of doing these point solutions. They're doing pilots, and the pilots don't get out of pilot mode, right? They get stuck in pilots, and it's hard to operationalize. What do you see? And I showed you a little bit of the framework that we look at when we kind of consider this. What are your thoughts about readiness and maturity? Do you look at this and do you help your organizations, your client organizations, understand their readiness? And if so, what are the elements of that from your perspective?
Sure. Well, first off, I'd have to say, I hate the term pilot. Like, I really, really hate the term pilot. I think pilot gives organizations the license to actually call something unsuccessful. So now
it's just a pilot.
Yeah, exactly. And so if you call it a pilot, it's why I know like a stat was raised like, I don't know, 6 months ago that said, 70% of AI initiatives fail. Well, that's because you
Yeah.
call them pilots and you give people excuses to, call it the pilot didn't work well, we didn't see the value and move
Yeah.
on. Because I think it's a transformation across an
Mm.
organization, which will include trying many things.
Mm.
But like as part of that transformation, you'll have things that work better than you thought and things that didn't work as
Mhm.
well as you thought. But that
Mm.
transformation, you're not piloting a transformation. You're either
Right.
driving it,
Right.
and you start with a few different initiatives. And I think
Yeah.
the most successful organizations are, aware of what the problem is, skill and make sure that the team has the right knowledge, have
Mhm.
some sort of operational capabilities that they can actually make it happen, and then have a little bit of leadership and vision to actually drive it through with, like as you have a framework with the right governance around
Mhm.
those projects actually being successful long term.
Yeah, and so we call them proof of value, by the way, when we do them, because what we want to do is we want to use production data. We want to make sure it can be scaled and operationalized, right? So I'm with you on the proof of concept idea that it is kind of an excuse to not succeed, and oh, it's just a pilot, right? Or proof of concept, so we're a pilot. So anyway, so when you think about where you see organizations, what are they understanding that this is kind of multidimensional, that they do need to have many, many pieces in place, that they do need to embed this in the operations of the organization? Because I see a lot of enterprises doing lots of individual point solutions and lots of experimentation, not necessarily integrating this, holistically throughout the organization. What is your experience with
Yeah, and
those
I can give you the
areas?
experience in two sides. One of it is the transformation that we're driving at Diligent, and second, the transformation that our clients are driving. And I've shared with our team many, many times that, and I'm really, really passionate about that. We're a company that sells, software and AI to our clients that ultimately they're looking for outcomes.
Mm.
And I fundamentally believe that making sure that we're driving an effective AI transformation internally will make
Mhm.
our products better. Because we see what works in our own transformation of different departments. And you
Mm.
see then you put on your product hat and says, well, I don't think we're going far enough. How do we go
Mm.
farther to make sure we're having real impact for our clients? Because when I
Mhm.
look internally at Diligent, we have our own transformation goals and transformation targets around how AI is going to transform how we do business and how we operate. And the reality is, I'm not looking for people buying products. I'm
Mhm.
looking for
Mhm.
people transforming and getting more leverage out of their
Mm.
business. And
Mm.
so it makes you very, very aware to say, well, how are we talking about our products? How are we
Mm.
talking about that transformation that we're ultimately driving with our products for our clients? Because again, I'm not looking for people buying a bunch of software. I'm looking for our own teams to actually drive real transformation. And so when we
Mm.
go into our clients, if you actually have that right mindset,
Mm.
we sell software into legal departments, compliance departments, audit departments, risk departments. And it's helpful to know and have that framing that each of those departments likely has some sort of AI driven goal that's been handed
Mhm.
down by the CEO. So whether that is compliance has to be able to do way more with less resources. Okay, great. So when you go in and talk to a client, you don't talk about your features. You talk about
Mhm.
how you can help them transform their compliance organization so that they
Mhm.
can keep up with and make good on all the compliance challenges and complexities, but they can do so with the same, if not fewer people. And I think
Mm.
that's ultimately the framing. Doing that through people, for the most part, don't care how they're doing it. I think people want
Yeah.
to put a check marks next to we're doing it through AI, but ultimately
Mhm.
they're looking to say, how do I get much more efficient in my business? And you can do
Right.
that with AI powered software.
Right. And AI technology is one element of that, but there's lots of other pieces that need to be in place and need to be a
I mean,
part of the
a
solution.
large client of ours, and I won't share the name of it, came and said, "Hey, for one of the areas of their business that we sell software in, they would like to completely automate that function, and they currently have a
Mm.
large team in place actually doing that."
Mm.
And they want to use AI and agents to actually make sure that's automated in the future. The client said, that's our goal. We're going to do it. It's a 5-year plan. This is what we're working on. This has been pushed down. It's not just for our function, but it's for every function. And the
Mm.
conversation with them was we can help you do that. Here's how we do that with our product and help you do that and drive it. And they're on the hook to meet a target from their organization. And ultimately, they need partners to help them do it. And I think
Mm.
the most successful SaaS companies, AI companies, are the ones that just say, look, what are the outcomes and how does AI help to deliver that for you, as opposed to just pilots.
Sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And tell me, without necessarily getting into a commercial for Diligent, but tell me how Diligent helps. Like, what do you guys do for
Yeah,
them?
so
How do you help catalyze those changes?
it's pretty straightforward. So a little bit of the history of Diligent. So Diligent started out as a governance company. And
Hmm.
so we are fortunate enough to work with 70% of the Fortune 1000, 70% of the FTSE 100, two-thirds of the DAX 30, same thing in Australia. So it's a big global footprint across leading organizations. And we work with thousands of mid-market companies too. And we help you improve how you do governance. So, how management connects with the board, how you make sure that you have the right information, right conversations, connectivity, and all the workflows around that. Over time, we found that boards and CEOs were spending way more time on areas like risk and compliance because the risks coming at us have just increased dramatically over the last 10 years. In areas of compliance, if you mess up and get it wrong, you're going to be embarrassed by whatever jurisdiction you operate in and their government. And so we moved into solutions that help our clients in those ways. The reality is, for good or for bad, areas like risk, areas like compliance, areas like audit, those are areas that are not outside of like highly regulated organizations. They're not areas that are getting massive amounts of incremental budget.
Right.
And so, but there are areas where the complexity continues to increase for our clients over time. And so it's very, very simple and straightforward. The way those clients look at software and the way those clients look at AI is saying, how do I keep up with an increasing set of needs in a department where, flat is the new up for budget? But the reality is, if you talk to any CEO out there and you say, look, do you expect your compliance department, do you expect your compliance spend to grow at the same rate at revenue? No, no, you don't. And
Right.
and what do you expect with your compliance spend over the next 5 years with AI? Everybody expects it to be radically transformed. And so you have clients who come to us and say, Diligent, here's the future. I need to be compliant with more things. And my boss or my boss's boss tells me, and we got to do it at half or a third the cost.
Mm.
And so we ultimately say, and what we've done with our platform is wire everything we did with AI. So rather than just taking and improving workflows for you, we now improve workflows and use agents. So you said, look, in order to meet, grow, and exceed whatever your compliance requirements are, you can now do it with a team that charged with agents doesn't need to be as large. I think that's ultimately, we fell in a very spot where it's really easy for us to deliver for our clients because it's very, very clear to us what they need. Increasing
Right.
compliance obligations
Yeah.
with an expectation for decreasing budget, and you're not going to do that any other way than with agents. And
Right.
I mean, you know this very well, but what is really transformative about AI is it's not just the software TAM, but it's the labor TAM as well. Because people
Right.
expect to say, how do I make that more efficient? And that's what we do for our clients.
So, so when you think about governance and you think about what a board needs to do and what the CEO needs to do, they need to understand how the investments in AI are working, right? How well they're getting the return, how things are progressing, and that kind of can get into pretty deep in the weeds. How do you help facilitate that? How deep do you go with your governance processes to help, say, monitor investments and monitor?
So, how do we help our clients effectively run governance or manage governance of their AI projects? Let me talk about the three different main areas: governance, risk, and compliance, and how we help our clients and what that looks like. On the governance side is exactly what you mentioned. On the governance side, where it is, we have goals to achieve that we have committed to our board. How do we make sure that we're driving the right process to track and make sure that those goals tie to actually and those activities tied to the goals that we've communicated either with our board or even in some cases to our shareholders. So we help make it really easy to track that, look longitudinally, and we use AI to do that. What did I say? What did I commit? How am I tracking on it? How does it tie to different initiatives going internally and making it really easy to actually do that and track that longitudinally over time as management, as the CEO, and the board. On the compliance side, we talked about. On the compliance side, it's a cost optimization, efficiency job, making sure that you don't lower the bar from a compliance obligation side. That's also true of audit, where people have the same goals but want to be able to do it in an efficient way with agents and less people. On the risk side, it's interesting, and it ties back to the governance side. Risk being more strategic, where the promise of AI, the challenge with risk is signal and noise. How do I understand with all the things coming out at me? How do I help to understand? How do I help to separate the signal from the noise? And AI actually gives you the ability to do that. And it's in a really, really powerful way. We try to make it very, very accessible for any organization to actually manage risk. And we help to make it really, really easy for that organization to keep it always on, continuously monitoring and make sure you're aware of those things, because the risk is what will keep you from achieving those obligations and those goals that you said actually to your board, and ultimately you're being successful in that AI transformation.
Interesting. So when you look across your customers and the industries that they're in, the sectors, I'm sure that the preparedness and the readiness and the maturity is lumpy, right? There's some sectors that are more ready than others. How would you kind of classify them? What kind of buckets would you put them in? I know you mentioned that there's some that don't want anything to do with AI, right? And there's some that embrace it.
It's interesting. I think most CEOs would tell you. I think there are fewer and fewer organizations, I think, over time that are not at least AI aware and know that AI applied to certain businesses or functions ultimately is going to be required. And however you define is going to be required. It's either going to be required from the board, going to be required by their shareholders, going to be required to keep up with the competition, et cetera. So I think that the number of organizations that are, I'm not touching AI with a 10-foot pole, gets fewer and fewer, every 6 months or every year. So we did have clients who would say that initially, and I can remember one very distinct one who said, I'm not touching AI. But a year later saying, well, how do we pick the right places to go and experiment? I think you have a lot of clients who are in the launching pilots, go back to your thing, fashion, and are going to have to manage through the fact that it can't just be pilots, it has to be transformation. Then I think you see the next tranche of clients that's actually really starting to tackle functions and drive real change. And then I think you see the last sliver, which is a truly unique and special set of companies who are actually really transforming their organizations with AI. More of those organizations tend to sit in Silicon Valley or other innovation hubs, but you're seeing that they're 10x more productive than the average organization. And how does it long take for the people in the middle of the pack, or even the people who are leading the way, to get up to that 10x way? I think that is still just a handful of organizations.
So, and would you say is it kind of heterogeneous across sectors and industries, or do you see some patterns emerge? Or are there certain size organizations that are in each of these buckets? How do you kind of?
It's a great question. I don't. I have not seen as much of a variance by sector per se.
Okay.
Let me start. Remove technology, tech companies who, AI is much their product as it is like their business, and
everybody is an AI company.
Exactly. It has to be at some level there. I think with other organizations, it's really interesting. It's I think it is not sector or size of company specific. You can put a little asterisk next to companies like in healthcare or other places that have HIPAA and other requirements that, require a ton of additional complexity. I think it's almost leadership driven. Like I was blown away by a large insurer who's one of our clients, where the CEO has mandated that every single role or function, every single role has a digital twin, an AI capability that they'll build up every single role, up and including the board, where every single role actually has that, and they're driving that, and they expect that digital twin to be able to do the role of those individuals, and then eventually, I don't know, maybe it automates that role over time, or makes those people 10x the productive, or whatever might end up being. And I would assume that there are other insurers who are maybe not as aggressive in their journey and picking a few departments or spots to try it. And so I do think it is as much leadership driven. Our business is quite global, and so I go around the globe as well. And I think I've been more impressed than I thought I would be, even around some European companies, and they're leaning in transformation. And I think part of it is specific to the type of work and functions we do. Given the excessive regulation that exists in some places in Europe, I think some of those organizations are having to lean in more, because that's just kind of the only way you can deal with it. And so I think it is really a mixed bag. I don't think, like I said, I think the prevailing wisdom in the US is that Europe is further behind on AI, but I haven't necessarily seen that, at least within the functions that we work on. So I think you've seen enough companies leaning in.
It's so interesting. And again, you're always going to have the outliers, right, on either end of the spectrum. So it's interesting to hear that whole idea of every role having a digital twin. That's fascinating. And I can see how that could lead to a lot of interesting opportunities and challenges and so on. Tell me where you feel, or where you observe that organizations have the greatest gaps in terms of their preparedness, their ability to execute. What is missing? I mean, data is a big piece of this.
I think there is a massive gap in ability to execute. Like I just think it's a massive gap. I think it is a chasm. I think it is between the conversations that happen at the CEO and board level, even for the most committed CEOs who say, we're going to transform what we do. Okay, then that's the what, and then the how. How do we do it? And I think the gap between understanding and reading, a case study around how an organization had their, like I said, like I mentioned earlier, their support organization become, 2x as productive or whatever it might end up being, or required half as many people to meet that target. Well, how do you actually do that? And
Right.
that's where the gap is. Some companies, some partners, some organizations are helping to fill that gap. And if CEOs know diligence is actually going to help me drive that transformation and compliance that I'm asking for, I can put a check next to, okay, make this function 50% more productive. But like as you go through those, as you separate from the noise and like the website AI from the actual impact, I think that's where the gap still exists. You see the impact in functions, of course, that, I'm sure you've talked about before, but areas like, in developer tools and engineering
Yep.
productivity, or things
Yep.
like, as I mentioned, things like support or customer success. But I
Yeah.
think some of those other functions, if a partner can help you accelerate it, you
Sure.
lean with the partners and you see those companies grow really fast.
Sure.
If you can't find the right partner, you find a bit of the, that chasm around how do I build the capabilities? How do I bring in the right people to do it?
Yeah. So one area we're seeing a lot of interest in that where we're helping organizations is software development lifecycle. Where can they insert coding assistance and where can they bring in AI to help everything from requirements and user stories to everything through documentation, coding assistance, and so on. So that seems to be a pretty big area of opportunity, but also the customer facing call deflection, self-service, support bots, those types of things. We find that the biggest gap there is data and content. Is that something that's surfacing for your companies that you're dealing with, or is that kind of subsumed into other operational challenges?
Yeah, it's one of the things that we go through, like our own internal transformation. You're completely right. Like it all starts with having the right data in the right places to manage. For most of our clients on the diligent side, they already have their data in diligent systems.
Okay.
And so the ability to take that and then transform it and make it more accessible, more productive, continuously monitor it, add agents on top of it is massive. And so
Huh.
for our clients, they're already part of the way down the journey because they have that information in the right
Okay.
system. Now, do you require manual checks, people confirm, people managing a workflow, or do you have agents
Yeah.
managing that workflow?
So are you managing knowledge bases and those types of things or support?
Yes. Yes.
Interesting. Oh, so that's a big part of that whole process is ingesting those assets.
And the data, once you have the data, you have it structured and you have the workflows around it.
Okay.
One of the things that for governance, risk, and compliance, especially areas of risk, compliance, audit, there are workflows that are relatively standard that just need to be added agents to automate. Data is in the right place. In some cases, data is always messy at some level with different clients. Sure. But when most clients have their data already in diligent, then it's really easy for us to help to add agents and automate.
Interesting. That's great. And certainly it sounds like a really, complete holistic solution.
And for our clients, that's why it has been a huge unlock in value for them. Because you say, if the data is sitting in there, how do I drive the right automation? How do I not just manage it from point A to point B, but how do I take it through its full useful life? And now you can do that as it starts within our systems, but may need to leave our systems and go to other places to solve problems for a client.
Right. Do you have an opinion about companies like Glean? We've seen some organizations deploy them, get some good results, but there's a little bit of opaqueness to some of their things like ontologies and knowledge graphs, and plus they're kind of walled garden. You have to really be in their environment. Do you have an opinion about those kinds of companies?
We are a client. We use Glean to help to power our internal diligent GPT and our tools. And we have found that it's very helpful for kind of some initial work we've done, but then our team internally has built agents on top of it to take much further along than some of current capabilities. It's interesting because the same conversation we have with our clients, we also have with our partners and suppliers. And in many cases, the conversations that we will have with folks at Glean is, here's what we're looking to do. If you can deliver that capability, that's great. If you can't, then we'll help to take and add our own capabilities on top. And for some of our more forward-thinking clients, we'll have that discussion with them as well around diligence capabilities as well. And I always love to spend the direct time with clients and understand, what is your roadmap? And if you have a capability that you want to build on top of it, we'd be glad to do it for you, because if it works for you, it likely works for other clients. And most of our clients are very much in the mode of saying, yeah, if you can do this for us in a way where
Mm,
you can manage it at scale, so we don't
mm,
have to do it on our own, we're happy to have Diligent do it as long
mm.
as the price to value equation works for me doing
Sure.
it ourselves. And I think just from a Glean perspective, I think our team has built a ton on top of and waiting for kind of capabilities. And like I said, kind of us being adopters makes me also
Mm,
realize what I want in a partner if I'm
mm,
one of Diligent's customers using
mm,
our product to help to drive. And I think that there is a lot of innovation, given
mm,
how easy it is to add capabilities
mm.
today, kind of with
Yeah.
coding tools, et cetera, vibe coding, et cetera, on top of vendor stacks. The
Hmm.
question is, how quickly will vendors actually deliver and
Right.
actually deliver on those agents for you so you won't have to build them on top of the stack.
Right.
And
Right.
wherever we can learn from our early adopters, we do so.
Mm. It's so interesting. There's aspirational functionality, I like to call it. Right. It's something that you're planning, it's in your roadmap, but then the question is what's the gap between, where you are today and what that aspiration is.
Yeah, and part of our role too, and we've done this for a lot of our clients, there will be an AI board member in the future.
Sure.
So what
Yeah.
does that look like? How does that
Yeah.
function? And
Yeah.
how do we have that dialogue with our clients around how do we power some of those capabilities? And I think staying ahead and with, your most innovative clients helps challenge you to make sure you say, where do the early adopters want to push us and how do we deliver
Mhm.
those capabilities for them?
Mhm.
If we can be fortunate enough to work with the people who are truly pushing the edges of innovation, it just makes us better and helps us up our game.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Shift gears a little bit. You and I talked about how AI is kind of transforming the labor market, the job market. I was talking about how, entry-level jobs are disappearing because they're being handled by AI. And then you had a very interesting perspective on this where you talked about AI native employees, new hires, interns, people coming out of university or even not even going to university, but coming in with a new set of skills. Talk a little bit about how you see that evolving, because a lot of organizations are kind of thinking, well, we can automate these jobs, but then where do the future senior leaders come from, right? How do they come up through the ranks? But you had a very interesting perspective on that. You want to
Yeah,
share?
I would disagree with the narrative that
Hmm.
says there are not going to be roles for recent college grads.
Hmm.
When you think about it, I need team members who are willing to be all in on AI, adopt all the latest tools, and make sure that they are 10x employees, 10x team members. And the reality is, I'm going to create every opportunity I can for my current team to become 10x team members. But if someone isn't intellectually curious, if someone doesn't want to learn that
Yeah.
next set of tools or capabilities, I will, and I think most other organizations will give them a period of time, but at some period of time, you
Yeah.
don't wait. And when I look at new employees coming in, and there are, new, you can characterize new as there are many kinds of new, but
Yeah.
people come in with knowledge of and using all the most modern tools and already function in a role that is 5 to 10x
Hmm.
what another team member will do. I think there are tons and tons of opportunities for those individuals to come in. And so my advice to a early stage potential team member employee, same thing I would give to a late tenured team member, which is you got to be functioning with all the newest set of tools. You need to be intellectually curious. You need to build your capabilities because that's how you're going to scale your career. And I think there are some people who are hungry and eager and
Yeah.
already using those tools who can deliver that value and maybe faster than the people who don't want to change.
Yeah, and then there's a group of people who are overusing the tools, right? I don't know if you've experienced that, but we've had, we use contractors sometimes, and sometimes a contractor will come in and they'll produce outputs without synthesis or without their true creativity and so on. Are you seeing that happening in organizations?
Less so across our clients. I would say most of those individuals are, well, I would say less so across our clients in general. There are people at the margin who are trying to create everything themselves. And while I think the new tools and capabilities give you the ability to do that, I think just defining and aligning on what's the strategy and
Mm.
how you should, more is just more by
Right,
definition. And so
right.
I think more of the right is what
Yeah,
matters the most. And I think,
absolutely.
and I think we try to help our clients and filter to where we can create the right stuff that has the right impact.
Right, right, right. So, let's see, we talked about the changing workforce. What else do you see as kind of so you talked a lot about, the fact that organizations, there's a gulf between having a vision and being able to execute. Where are the gaps in terms of what you're able to do for an organization where they need to kind of go out. So where does the enablement that you provide leave off, and where the customer really has to either find a partner or build the capability, or how far can you take them versus how far they have to go, I guess is the question.
Yeah, it's a great question. So we offer, like I said, AI infused, AI wired software and agents to our clients, and it's a really interesting evolution that's going on just across the software industry in general, where in the past it required a partner to do a bunch of arms and legs work to piece things together to make it easier for your software to work. With AI, that is decreasing materially for a lot of use cases. And by that, I mean, you can just get up and running much faster. We can use agents to go and collect and pull and tag your data and go access different systems to pull that directly. There will always be some of that, and we lean on partners to help to do that, but way, way, way less of that today than there was in the past, and there'll be way less of that in the future. And I think that's just the way software is heading. People expect things to just work, and agents will help to enable that for clients sooner. And so there will always be a need to help to partner and help organizations cross the chasm. I think for what we do, which are specific, departmental or functional tools, we already have the context and know what your organization is likely trying to do. You will educate us a bit, but then you can turn us loose and we'll help to drive the change and the outcomes and the impact you expect.
Interesting. So one of the things that we're seeing, and you mentioned agents a number of times, organizations are trying to take that next level of building agentic capabilities, and we're certainly helping organizations do that as well. But how do you see that impacting compliance and risk management? Because now you're introducing things that can kind of operate somewhat autonomously. We still have to have the right guardrails. We still have to understand the process. I like to say you can't automate what you don't understand. So tell me how that agentic landscape or emerging agentic landscape is impacting.
Yeah, it's a great question. A couple things. So you've highlighted this before, but yeah, you need the right data.
Yeah.
If you don't have the right data and you don't know where the right data is, like you can't drive the progress you expect. For many of our clients, it's already in our system, so it makes it easy to do that. And you have to have the right process. You can't automate something if you don't know what the process ultimately ends up being. So you need both those things. Those are just foundational components to get started. Now, beyond that, it's interesting. Most of our clients, and we were having this debate last week across team, most of our clients are not asking for agents. No, most of our clients are not saying they're asking for capabilities and they're asking for outcomes. And so I think that there is a whole view of, what technology helps you deliver those outcomes. But for most of our clients, they don't care if I ever said the word agent or not. They just care about an outcome. I spent, as you mentioned, about 10 years of my career at McKinsey and Company. And I like to liken agents to like that really smart associate. And you have the analogy in any team or any work environment, but it is the person who does the job you ask them for, but also knows what the next step likely is and asks you if you would like to do that as well. What is that next step? And over time, you trust that you don't need them to check in with you multiple times a day. Maybe they check in with you at the end of every day or each morning. And then maybe you say that person is so good on their own. They know what the next step is. They do things in a contextually aware environment. They know what decisions we've made historically as an organization, and so they know what to replicate. Now I'm doing it weekly, or now they're just sending me reports, etc. So I think that's the right way to think about it. Now, there is the notion of, how do I make sure, like, it's not things running around doing everything. Through the initial checking, you're ultimately training that agent. So one of the something I read online that really resonated, it says you actually have to think about training an agent the same level of training a team member or employee.
Yeah, exactly.
And so if the time frame getting someone up and running for their job was going to be a month, you should expect some level of that for your agents as well. We can help because most of the activities are pretty standard workflow. Once you kind of do that, you have the right guardrails for it. But to the extent that there is variance in what you might want that individual to do or that agent to do, it's going to come from teaching. And so back to your thing around, I think people will and are making sure that they check in with the agent prompts them more frequently as it gets up and running. But once you're comfortable with it, you can just let it go and update you later. Now, what we make sure that we can do is have the right governance and have the right audit trails around it. Because on anything that is risk, compliance, audit, or governance related, you may be okay with that agent making 10 decisions once you get comfortable with it. But you're going to want to go back and someone's going to say, wait, how do we get to this endpoint? Show me that we checked all these things along the way. And you're going to need to pull a string and show out, here's all the decision that went on along the way. And that's just the nature of the way enterprise systems powered by agents are going to be done. And it is incredibly true in areas like risk, compliance, governance, and audit.
Those audit trails and that traceability is going to be paramount to this. And I really like the way you're thinking about this is, it's a trusted colleague. I treat my Claude projects that way, right? I upload lots of content and my past articles and my thought leadership and webinars and podcasts and client meetings and all of that. And I ask it questions and it does astound me every day. I give it really hard problems to solve and I'm always blown away. And the value is just astounding. But I do think of it that way. Think of it as, here's an entity that I'm asking questions of that understands the context, understands this world, and has the ability to make some of those decisions. I'm mostly doing it to produce deliverables and things like that, but we're to derive new IP, we're to do evaluations such as our 74 question survey. A lot of that is automated, right? A lot of that is, you can gather the information, the inputs, and then the agent basically goes off and fills that in and produces the scores and the outcomes and the expectations. I like also the fact that you are emphasizing the fact that you need to understand the process, right? I used to say you can't automate a mess, but you can automate a mess. You can have an automated mess, but you can't automate what you don't understand. So I think that's really critical.
Yeah, someone mentioned something that really, really resonated with me as well. They were talking about, how does this world unfold? Like with what will Claude do? What will OpenAI do? And all those different dynamics. And they're talking within the context of domain specific or vertical specific or niche specific current technology providers. Like what ends up getting commoditized versus what ends up being its own separate function. And the notion of context is incredibly important. I think that's what differentiates the way you think about operating. If you can work with a partner who already knows your context and they're up and running much faster, that's huge. If for work that doesn't require a ton of context, and then you can offer more generic solutions. But context is ultimately how your agents will make the decisions within knowing either a business function, process, environment, regulatory framework that matters. And if that context is more nuanced, then you'll see your current partners, if they can up their game, thrive for you. But if it doesn't and that matters less, then I think that you'll have general purpose LLMs that will serve those incredibly quickly. And you'll always offer more context to those, they'll get better, but you can offer the most relevant solution to you that gets you to your outcome fastest.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that makes a lot of sense. And again, it's astounding how powerful these things are. I get it, several different spreadsheets and interview findings and statements of work and meeting transcripts and all these things.
I mean, I worry we have healthy debates internally. One of the departments we sell into is legal. We sell all these different departments, and it's really, really interesting to see just how good the LLMs have gotten at take legal use cases in specific. And so if you're going to be a software company that delivers or offers things into legal as a department, what level of functionality are you going to put on top of that? And I think that's an area that is big and generic enough where that's a really good question, because every 7 months, LLMs have another big breakthrough.
Exactly.
When does that continue or whatever? How you offer that value to your clients, how you can offer more context to their unique needs to offer that unique value. I think in some categories it's easy. I think some categories it's going to be much tougher.
Absolutely. So with that, let's kind of wrap up with your thoughts about where you see the industry going, where you see Diligent going. What's on the horizon? How do you see things kind of evolving in the next couple of years? I mean, obviously a year is a long time in our world.
Yeah, it's there's so much change going on in the world. These are conversations that we have all the time, kind of with our clients, with our team, with our, investors and board. I will start with saying there's never been a more exciting time in my career to be building product.
Yeah.
AI offers just so many incredible opportunities. So I think it's going to be transformative. And I think the organization to transform their organizations around AI and deliver those capabilities to clients are going to do unbelievably well. But in any massive transformation or shift, you're going to say some companies who don't make it and don't transform and don't make it to the next level. And I think we're in both an exciting time and a scary time for that.
Yes,
And I
yes.
think it's really, I think it's awesome. We're growing faster than we have in the last many years. We're seeing massively accelerating growth. Clients are looking for, partners who can help deliver outcomes for them. And I think you'll see that for a lot of organizations. You can see volatility in the stock market as they look to see who the next winners are.
Right.
I think the winners are emerging. You just have to look hard to find them. And I think we find ourselves in a really, really exciting time and place to win in a really big way.
Agree. That's wonderful. Well, thank you for your time and your insights. This has been a fantastic conversation. I've really enjoyed it, and look forward to maybe having you on in the future.
Great. Thanks, Seth. Really appreciate the time. Fun discussion.
Absolutely. And where can people find you?
People can find me at diligent.com in New York City, on LinkedIn, or on X.
Okay, wonderful. So those will be in the show notes as well. And I want to thank our audience for their time, and we'll see you next time at the next Early AI podcast.
Thanks, Seth.
Thank you for joining us on another deep dive into AI innovation. Tune in next time when we introduce another industry expert and discuss how to maximize AI in your world. The Early AI podcast is sponsored by Early Information Science and Vector. To learn more, visit early.com. That's EARLEY.com. Thank you for tuning in.